Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining tonight's webinar, Creating Your Life's Work, How to Bring Passion and Purpose to Your Executive Job Search. Before actually I introduce Lawler Kang, tonight's presenter, you're in for a treat. We want to announce the Ivy Exec Mentor Network. We are excited to give you a sneak peek of the Ivy Mentor Network, our newest career resource that will be launching later this month. This will create a true Ivy Exec community of high achievers where professionals help professionals move ahead in their careers. The program is designed to match you with seasoned executives who will help you find answers to burning career questions. It's available to all access members each month at no additional charge. Also, as you can see here, mentors come from diverse industries and fields. You'll be able to filter your mentor selections by mentorship topic and by industry to precisely target best fit mentors for your needs. The mentors will address a wide variety of topics with you, ranging from interview prep to job search strategies to market and industry reviews. Tonight's presenter, Lawler Kang, is one of our distinguished mentors. So we are thrilled to have him on board as a mentor and know he will provide invaluable insights and inspiration to his proteges. You'll be able to request Lawler as a mentor when the program launches. Actually, as you can already see here, we have some information about Lawler, and I'll introduce him a little bit as well. After 15 years of corporate and entrepreneurial leadership, Lawler wrote Passion at Work, published by Pearson Prentice Hall, and founded Passion at Work Partners. He has many speaking and consulting clients like HP, Cisco, Google, and most top-tier business schools. His prior endeavors include leading successful turnarounds of 3 technology and biotech firms, serving as an engagement manager and then managing director at Scient. He graduated from Wharton Business School and Vassar College.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great evening, and thank you so much for the gift of your time. Most of you are probably in job search mode right now or are thinking about it. And hopefully the tagline of tonight's webinar caught your eye. I'd like to draw a distinction, though, between looking for a job or searching for a job and searching for your life's work. And this may sound like a trivial difference, but if you think about it, your life's work is something that you can remember, that you'll look back upon with pride and satisfaction, versus just working a job. Now, your life's work doesn't usually bump into you, right, randomly. You must proactively go out and make it happen, I've found from experience. And the tools, above all else, I want you all to come away from tonight having some tools you can use to help you start iterating your options out there as you try to and succeed in finding what I call your life's work, not just working a job. Okay, with that, I'd like to start off with a story about a woman named Vivian. Actually, her name was Van Quash, Vietnam. She moved from Vietnam to San Francisco in 1986, changed her name to Vivian to fit in. She found work at an urban pay-by-the-hour hotel in San Francisco. Can only imagine what was happening there. About 2 months after joining this hotel, it was purchased by a gentleman named Chip Conley. Now, Chip noticed Vivian brought with her a certain unabashed passion and purpose that just did not fit the surroundings in which she was working. Got to know her better. Turns out she did not want to be the world's best toilet scrubber, as the picture there shows. What really got her going were the relationships she was building with the hotel staff and their clients. And by the way, Chip changed the revenue model of the hotel to be standard pay by the night. Her purpose and passions were simply letting visitors, many of whom had come from a long way, experience the best night's sleep possible because she could relate to it coming from Vietnam. She's been with Chip's organization for over 25 years in an industry where attrition is 50% and higher, and her impact on his overall operations has been phenomenal. One gentleman has returned over 125 times just to hang out with Vivian and catch up with her. Now, Vivian is a very good example of one of my main theses at work. It's the why and the how you bring to work that has a greater impact on your happiness, aka performance, than what it is you do. Why plus how is greater than what. And in fact, if you think about it, why and how as defined with those descriptors underneath them, and by the way, those are the outputs of the tools I'll be walking you all through, your why and your how should actually drive your what. Now, most of us have been able to develop careers based on this dynamic, right? How our talents impact our what. Oh, he's good with people, he should go into HR. She's good with numbers, she should go into finance. He's a real joker, he should go into marketing, whatever. But if you think about it, intuitively and per our research, the more of the why and the how you can bring to the what you do, the happier, more productive, and more profitable you'll be. Okay, I'd like to start off sharing two interlocking philosophies that establish this notion, lay the landscape, if you will, for what I like to call emotional engagement. The first is based on the notion that passion leads to performance, leads to profits. Have you all read this book, Good to Great, by Jim Collins? If you haven't, give it a read. It's a phenomenal book. And if you have, dust it off again. It's, I like to say, diamonds are forever. Jim Collins essentially studied what made great companies great, looking at their stock performance over time. He found three similarities between these great companies. One of them was the great companies focused on those activities that ignited in their employees' passions. And the idea here was not to stimulate passion, but was to discover what makes you passionate and bring that to work. And this stock graph shows, I can't think of a better example, frankly, of the impact of bringing your passions to work. The great companies did 700% better than their direct competitors over time in Wall Street. Now, the second interlocking philosophy that lays this groundwork is simply two words uttered by a gentleman named Socrates a few thousand years ago. Know thyself. Know thyself. From my experience, the three L's of living, to lead successfully, to live happily, and to love and be loved, requires us to know ourselves, to be true, to be real, to be authentic at all times. And let me tell you, from experience, this can get difficult, right? This can get a little gnarly, frankly, as relationships of all sorts come in and out of our lives. And the tools I'll be walking you all through have been built explicitly for this purpose in mind. Help you all get to know yourselves a couple iterations better, and then transfer that knowledge into your work. Okay, so topics tonight. First, I'm going to make the case, as silly, as asinine as it may sound, why you should bring your passions and purposes to work. I'll start off with a real quick business case, and then I'll make it personal. I'll then walk you through, I think I've got 3 benefits of bringing them to work. There are many more. Don't have time tonight, but just wanted to really, I suppose, bring it home. I'll then walk you through a process I've developed that can help you identify your why and your how. I'll show you how you can use these findings in your search, and I'll close with a few slides as your roles as leaders. Okay, so first the business case. Gallup comes out with surveys every once in a while, and the most recent survey of Q4 last year reveals that over half the American workforce is disengaged from their work. That means they're putting in the time, they're clocking in and out, but they're not giving their work passion or energy. Almost 20% are actively disengaged. That means they are consciously working against the efforts of those who are engaged trying to make stuff happen. And that 20% tranche has been estimated to cost U.S. business over $300 billion per year in lost ROI. Question to you all, why do you think over half the American workforce, or actually more than that, is disengaged? Why do you think there's such high lack of job satisfaction out there? and I'm assuming that you all can give me some answers here, and hopefully you can.
If you can type them into the chat box or the questions box, I'll be able to convey them to the presenter. Let's see. For example, work just for a living. That's one response that came in.
Yes.
If there's any more. If you have any other question, or live to work versus work to live. People have fears and greed.
That they do.
Yep. So
Yes.
The three that came in so far.
Okay. Well, I mean, there are many reasons why this dynamic is so profound, and they're all correct. And people who just mentioned those are dead on. Like to make this argument personal, just to try to maybe bring this whole idea a couple steps closer to home. I came across a fascinating set of research recently online. You may have seen it, made the Facebook rounds. A woman works at a hospice for 15 years. She asks her patients in their dying days if they have any regrets, anything they wish they could go back and do over again. 5 themes emerged from these responses. I'll share them with you. First, they wish they had the courage to live a life true to themselves, not what other people expect of them. They wish they had the courage to express their feelings more. They wish they'd stayed in touch with friends. They wish they'd let themselves be happier. They realized on their deathbeds that happiness is a choice. Finally, they wish they hadn't worked so hard. So why do we work so hard? Why do we spend most of our time and probably most of our waking hours and probably many of our sleeping hours thinking about this thing called work? Why do we all get into really good universities, go back, get more degrees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? This question only bothered me for about 15 years. One buoy kept bobbing to the surface, though: control. We all want control of our lives, control where we live, where our kids go to school, our career prospects, our earning potential, who we sleep with at night. And looking back, we'll go through some pretty burly things just to gain 1 or 2 more slugs of this thing called control. Brings me to my last question on this topic. How do you want to make your mark? Or, according to Steve Jobs there, how do you want to dent the universe? Now, these pictures of these people, and most of these people, in fact, virtually all of them, come from very humble backgrounds. But they all have one thing in common. They all are driven by a passion and a purpose, actually to improve the world in some way. But I asked you the question, how do you want to make your mark? Like to share a story of a man I know reasonably well today, starting when he was a young boy, to bring this dynamic a couple steps closer to home. Young man was born in Los Angeles, had a relatively nice upbringing until he was about 8 or so. His parents separated, but this was LA. It was trendy. Everything was still cool. Young man was a go-getter. Captain of the football team, freshman class president, Eagle Scout, blah, blah, blah. And then one Friday afternoon, playing football, he gets whacked hard in the head. Keels over in the field, has a grand mal seizure, wakes up paralyzed waist down. I'll never forget this young man. He told me a story as he was being carried off the field, paralyzed waist down. He had a 1-second glimpse into his future, his entire future rolling out. He imagined growing old in a mobile home, because who would hire anyone in a wheelchair? He imagined the wide corridors, the fake wood paneling, the cheap smell of Formica. He imagined growing old, getting drunk, watching reruns of Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley's as the sun set. By far, though, the most disturbing part of this 1-second future projection was growing old alone, because who would marry anyone in a wheelchair? Young man was taken to the hospital where he was diagnosed with an aneurysm. Aneurysms are weakened blood vessels in our brains or our hearts. there's a picture on your screen there of a one in the brain. That little sort of peanut-shaped thing in the middle there, that's the aneurysm. 30,000 cases per year in the States per New York Times article. Of them, 15% die in the first 2 minutes of trauma. Of the remainder, half come out a remainder half die within 2 months, typically due to surgery. Of a remainder, half again come out of surgery, paralyzed, loss of faculties, retarded, etc. Young man was operated on, came out of a surgery, 8-hour surgery. They cut off his blood supply for almost 6 minutes. Came out in a coma for 4 days. And when he woke up from his coma, he was right side paralyzed, blind one eye, and verbally challenged. His head looked like the Elephant Man. About 8 days after coming out of his coma, his parents told him their separation was going to be final. Young man wanted to walk again, wanted to see again, went through rehab, etc., but he was pissed. He was mad at the world, did some really stupid things, joined the burgeoning LA punk rock scene, and did some really stupid things. Didn't drop out, though. Something inside him told him there's more to life than this. Applied to college, got into college, but then for no apparent reason, he had, over the course of the next 2 years, not one, not two, but 3 major abdominal procedures. Each took about 30 pounds off of him, left a total of 50 staple scars in his abdomen. Now, at the end of his last month-long hospital stay, he started thinking to himself, you know, someone out there doesn't like me. If all life is going to be is one constantly revolving door in and out of hospitals, I'm not sure that life's for me. It was then he realized inside each and every one of us is a core of steel, or passion, life, whatever you want to call it. He realized we create our destiny and we control our destiny. No matter what life, death, the economy, our parents, our bosses, our kids throw at us, we are in control of how we respond. And it's our response that, at the end of the day, will determine whether we are happy or sad. With this perhaps naive philosophy in mind, he finished college, got a job, and the rest of his young man's story was actually recounted to you at the beginning of this webinar by Matrices in various degrees. The young man is actually me. More specifically, it's my past. And we can't share our enthusiasm and joy of being able to share our story with you all today. So, some brief reflections from this melodrama. First one, doesn't matter if you're old or young, fat or short, or I'm sorry, fat or skinny, tall or short, sexy or sexier, all our hopes, all our dreams, all our desires for the future, and frankly our past, our memories, are separated from oblivion by 2 millimeters of cell wall in our brains. You can test for it, but it's a non-trivial procedure. I recently was informed that 1 out of 50 people in the States have an aneurysm in their brain. Now, most of us die of other causes, but 1 out of 50, those are odds I would necessarily might want to bet on. Brings me to my second reflection. We don't purr, we don't meow, we're not cats. We don't get 9 lives. Life's a one-shot deal. And because it's a one-shot deal, make friends with your past. Well, we all do things we regret, we wish we could go back and do over again. No matter how hard you push space-time, though, you can't go back. What you can do, though, is forgive as best you can, try to forget, and move on. I like to say, though, whatever we sweep under the rug will only cause bumps down that rug. And finally, whatever you do in life, work being a subset of life, do it with passion, do it with purpose. Now, this passion, purpose dividend, as I like to call it, extends from Wall Street, per Jim Collins, to our passive investors, the people at home, right? our key internal stakeholders, if you want. Our kids, our parents, hell, even our pets, right? Have you all seen this movie, Up in the Air? George Clooney plays an outsourced layoff guy. His job is flying around the country, laying people off. There's a phenomenal dialogue that I'm going to share with you right now that really drives this home. George has just flown into Cleveland, laid this gentleman off. He's morose. How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to afford my daughter's medication? And in the context of this interchange, George picks up that his kid's admiration is important to this gentleman. The dialogue goes something like this. I'm starting with George. Well, Bob, you know, I'll bet your kid's admiration is important to you. Well, it was. You know something? I'll bet they never have. Hey, aren't you trying to console me? Bob, I'm not a shrink. I'm a wake-up call. Do you know why kids love athletes? I don't know, because they screw lingerie models? No, that's why we like them. Kids love athletes because they follow their dreams. Yeah, well, I can't dunk. No, but you can cook. What do you mean? It says here on your resume you studied French culinary arts in college. While the rest of your class was bussing KFC, you were working El Fornillo. And then you graduate, come here, and get a job. Bob, let me ask you a question. How much did they first pay you to walk away from your dreams? $27,000 a year? And when are we going to do something that makes you happy? Good question. Bob, I see people like you all day long. People who have worked the same job for 20 years, punching in and out, not enjoying a day of it. This is a golden opportunity for you to find something you love to do. If you don't do it for your kids, if you don't do it for yourself, do it for your kids. Now, of course, this script is pure Hollywood, but I'll bet we can all empathize with this Bob character to some degree. I know I certainly can, or have. It's a very interesting calculus, a very harrowing calculus, actually, trying to figure out how am I going to meet my personal burn rate, right, my monthly fixed cost number, while finding something I love to do. And I'm not going to make any bones about it. Finding your life's work can require some sacrifice. It can require taking some very hard looks at your personal burn rate. What I can tell you, though, is once you've done it, you won't go back. Okay, so three quick benefits of bringing your passions and purposes to work. First, I strongly believe it can give us the power to be happy. A report came out of London about 8 years ago now. Data's still good, though. This gentleman's job is doing research. He researched happiness, came up with 10 things in the here and now we can do to increase our happiness. I'll share 5. First, don't equate happiness with money. Exercise regularly if you can. Have sex, preferably with someone you love. Seek work that engages your skills. Look to enjoy your job. And lastly, and this can be hard for all of us, sleep. Now, if I told you this report did not come out of a psychological think tank, but came out of an investment bank, would you believe me? Lo and behold, this cowboy, James Montier, from Global Equity Strategy from Dresdner, comes out with this report. I about fell out of my chair when it hit my desktop. I'm thinking to myself, if investment bankers aren't equating happiness with money, the world is truly changing. And guess what? The world is changing around us dramatically in ways our feeble minds have a hard time comprehending, much less capitalizing on. And that's personally an underlying reason why I'm so happy to be presenting to you all today. People on this call have the distinct opportunity and capability to change the world. And I'll come back to this in my closing slides. Okay, second benefit, you all heard this term, work-life balance. I've got a couple issues with this. First off, is balance possible? Is it possible to balance out the 11.5 hours we all spend every day getting ready for work, commuting to work, coming home from work, not to mention the occasional email session at night, the occasional IM chat with India or China? Is it possible to balance everything out? No, right? It's metaphysically impossible, which underscores a very obvious fact. It's all life, right? It's all life. Brings me to my second point. Does this metaphor apply? Life wins, work loses. Work wins, life loses? No, you should enjoy your job, right? So I suggest we banish this term balance from our daily vernacular and replace it with something more appropriate. It's not a question of balance, it's a question of priority. And the third tool I'll be walking you all through has been built explicitly for this with this notion in mind. Help us figure out what's important to us and allocate our time appropriately. Okay. Finally, the last benefit, and I'm running, I need to accelerate here because I'm running a little behind my schedule here. A very wise financial investor came up with a very obvious quote here. Never do what you don't enjoy. Doing so is like saving sex for your old age. Not a very good idea. If you all didn't know, Warren Buffett said that. And I like to say Warren really walks his talk there. Okay, so hopefully made the case why you should at least consider bringing your passions, purposes, etc. to work. I'm not going to walk you through a process to help you emotionally engage, as I like to call it, with your work and your job search. I like to frame this using 5 questions. First, what is my mission, my purpose, or my ikigai? Ikigai means my daily purpose, and it's been shown through research to give people on the island of Okinawa, it's a contributing factor as to why they're living 8 to 12 years longer than we are in the States. What are my passions? At what can I be the best and love to do? Does my work fit my priorities? And finally, are my dreams being supported by my work? And you'll see these questions reflected through the process. Okay, so these are icons of the tools I'll be walking you all through. Passion pyramid, personal balance sheet, and priority matrix. The bottom there you see what each of these delivers, and I'll be getting into this in more detail. Just a real quick observation here, all these tools take standard business concepts, things you might use at work, at least you've heard of them probably, and uses them to sort of identify these more squishy emotional topics. I realize coming from the management trenches that if I can't speak our language, I should say, it'll be more difficult for me to break through and actually get people to go through this process and get something out of it. Okay, so the passion pyramid delivers purposes, passions, and releases. Let me walk you through how this works. Start at the bottom part of the pyramid there and ask yourself, what have I loved about my life to date? And I've split this into 4 buckets for convenience. Education/career is essentially everything on your resume. Life is everything off resume. What 11/12 is based on some really fascinating research that shows what we like to do when we were 11 or 12 years old has the highest correlation with professional happiness. So think back, if you can, to what you like to do at 11 or 12, write it down there. Finally, who or what inspires us, and get that down as well. Once you have your data there, look for patterns in that data and ask yourself, why have I loved my releases to date? And what I like to call meta passions will quickly bubble up. Then ask yourself, how do I want to make my mark? Looking for patterns in all this information, and your personal purpose or mission statements will also percolate up as well. That bottom tranche, dislikes, you don't have to fill it in, although it can be very, very helpful in 2 contexts. First, it can give you some very good data, what you should not want to look for probably in your life's work search. It can also trigger sometimes what you did like as well. Okay, let me walk you through a real quick example of this. Now, and some of you out there might be thinking to yourself, wow, this seems so simple. People have been spending thousands of years trying to figure out what their personal purposes are. I don't want to discount their efforts there by any stretch of the imagination, but what I found is that 95% of people who go through this process can get their personal purpose or mission statements generated in less than 40 minutes. So, okay. So this gentleman was the SVP of North American Technology at Pfizer Corporation. $300 million budget, 1,200 people reported to this gentleman. He was 46, I believe, when he went through this process. Education career. He loved his biochem work in college. He loved delighting customers, planning and execution, loves managing innovation, loves building organizations. He loves seeing his reports blossom. Life. He's a family guy. He says, when I get back to Basking Ridge, I think it's where he lives, I turn my BlackBerry off. I'm a family guy. At 11/12, he loved chemistry. He loved running experiments. He loved anything having to do with medicine and the crossover to media. His favorite TV show growing up, if you can remember, it was Quincy M.E. He actually liked hanging out in hospitals for no apparent reason. I'm like, good for you, buddy. He also liked building things, right? Snow forged wood toys. Coincidentally, what's he doing now? He's building large-scale technology infrastructures for the world's second largest pharmaceutical company. Finally, he's inspired by his parents, the notion of healthcare, helping people live better lives, a couple executives he knows, and Mother Teresa. Looking for patterns in this and asking himself why, came up with these meta passions: caring for people, improving things, making a difference, evolving and growing, and enjoyment. His personal purpose or mission statements, his mark, provides security and happiness to my family, and he just cared about people. It didn't matter if you were a report, a peer, a customer, an end user, a random stranger on the streets, he cares about people and their well-being. Now, putting this all together can really explain and guide us. It explains to me personally why his career has been on such a very steep trajectory. I was informed that he was actually up to be CIO of Pfizer, and then they acquired Wyeth, and he was forced out due to political reasons. But he's meeting his purpose every day. He's milking his passions, and he's drawing on his releases in some really cool ways. Now, looking at his releases can provide some very interesting data as to how he might want to go about looking for his next steps. For example, managing investments there under life, right? He might want to join a PE shop, right? Or he could go into some sort of financial services company focusing on pharmaceutical companies, right? Just for sake of example, right? Yeah, so it's amazing the power of looking for synergies amongst your releases. One other observation about his information here. Yes, this guy is was a really big swinging corporate dongle. I'll bet his outputs, though, probably will look somewhat similar to yours if you go through this process. Why? We're all people. We all have very basic unconscious emotional drivers. And it's a very powerful takeaway from this whole process. We're all people, especially if you want to use these tools in a team context, they can really help break down stereotypes and biases. Okay, second tool. We all know what balance sheets are, I think. Many of us may not like them. No worries at all. You don't have to like them to use this. And if you don't like balance sheets at all, or if you haven't studied them in years, no worries at all either. We're really taking the structure and using it to categorize information. So balance sheets, as you may know, have essentially 4 quadrants: short-term and long-term assets and liabilities. My version, short-term assets are your talents, what you're great at and love doing on the asset side, and what you're deficient at or dislike doing on the liability side. We're all good at some things. We're all bad at some things. Get them down. Long term, I've split these into 2 buckets: values that allow you to excel on the asset side, and values that hold you back or you dislike on the liability side. And experiences. Experience assets or whatever experiences, including work, you might want to draw on in your all-day affairs. Intuitively, the more of your life you can bring to work, the happier you'll be. Long-term experience liabilities are experiences you still haven't had yet. These are essentially your dreams. Now, the reason they're liabilities is precisely that. You've not been able to retire them yet, and they're generating interest, in a manner of speaking. And I like to say, the older you get, the higher that rate becomes. Now, the last proxy to the financial version of the balance sheet, from my experience, the most valuable part of any balance sheet is equity, more specifically founder stock, right? Shares that are issued when your company is first started. Why is Zuckerberg and Gates, why are they so rich? Well, they had founder stock in Microsoft and Facebook. My version of founder stock is simply the number of weeks we have yet to live, presuming we're good and die on time. Now, unlike shares or equity that's recognized by GAAP and FASB, you can't buy these shares back. You can't use them as collateral. They will always deplete, sometimes at an accelerated and uncontrollable pace. So the question becomes, how do you want to use your founder stock, the most valuable part of your balance sheet, leveraging your assets, recognizing your liabilities to realize your dreams? And if you go through this process, if you fill out the balance sheet and go through this process, I'll bet you probably will be able to come up with some very interesting outputs from this sort of cycle alone. Just some other comments here. Oh, to calculate founder stock, if you're a woman, subtract your age from 84, multiply the answer by 52. If you're a man, subtract your age by 78. Now, mind you, I hope everyone on this call, goes 3 or 4 standard deviations to the older side of the bell curve. Just remember, we're not cats. Okay, some other observations here. First, getting feedback on your short-term assets and liabilities can be very valuable from people around you, maybe even the people at home. I found that what we're innately great at and love doing sometimes is so, innate to us, we can blow right by it. Similarly, we also can sometimes think we're better at certain things than we are. So getting some holistic feedback on your short-term talents can be a good thing. Once you identify what your short-term assets are, ask yourself, is this what my customers need, both internal and external? Is this what my role or my desired role, what I'm looking for? Are these talents geared for that role properly? And if not, what do I need to do to improve my short-term assets to really hit the ball out of the park for either the role and or the customer sets you'll be servicing? Finally, just a little teaser here, understanding what your team members and your managers' dreams and experiences are can be very, very powerful in terms of engaging other people. When was the last time someone asked you what your dreams are and asked you to write them down? Imagine sharing them with your boss. If you have a good boss, they might even help you realize your dreams in some small way. Now, why would they want to do this? What better source of engagement is there than helping your employees realize their dreams? Okay, real quick example of this. Here's my personal balance sheet. Just want to make some points here. My first short-term liability there, managing up. It took me 15 years to realize I'm pretty good managing down, right? I was able to turn around 3 companies, built a consulting practice, 100 people, etc. But managing up, I've had issues with it. I butted heads with founders, boards, most corporate bosses. It took a lot of courage for me to put that there. But once it was there, I said to myself, wow, that explains about 15 years of corporate tension and gives me a really good sort of bellwether what I should not do going forward, right? I probably should not work in a large organization going forward. It's just not part of my DNA there. Another just takeaway here, my second dream there, seeing Chupu break. Chupu's a wave in Tahiti. I'm a surfer. I wouldn't want to take off in this way, it would absolutely kill me. But right now, I'm trying to set aside money in a special account on a monthly basis so that when my Google Maps goes off and I got about 48 hours to know when this wave is going to start pumping, I can jump on a plane and see this wave break without putting it on my credit card. So getting your dreams down can have a tremendous impact on your financial planning. If y'all ever want to buy a house, for example, or a vacation home, many people want to do that. I'll ask them, next question I'll ask them is, have you started saving for it? The answer is, well, no. That's great. It's a dream, and it will forever remain a dream unless you take proactive action. Okay. The last tool I'll walk you all through tonight, Priority Matrix, classic consulting tool that it's incredibly flexible, and I'll get into this a little later on in the webinar. Let me walk you through a good example, taking life as a good example. And I suggest you do this in three contexts: life, work, and motivation. And probably as you're going through a life's work search, maybe compensation and location as well. Let me just walk you through. Let me take life as an example to give you an idea how this tool works. First step is coming up with whatever criteria are important to you in life. So say, for example, let's say that work, money, activities, family, and friends are important to you. You come up with a criteria. Ask yourself, put them down the column there and then across the top row. Once they're there, ignoring the redundant cells, ask yourself, is what I do for work there in the blue column more important than what's in the row column, or the gray column? If it is, put a 1 there. If it's not, leave it 0. Very simple 1 or 0 decision. All right. So in this case, is what I do for work more important than what I make? In this case, it is. So there's a 1 there. Is what I do for work more important than my activities, my family, my friends, etc.? Work left to right, top to bottom, and then once you're done, add them all up in the last column there. And you get a really quick, both quantitative and relative scale as to what's important to you. That's what's important to you. Now, going through this process a few thousand times with people, oftentimes we tend to spend our time in the exact opposite way as our priorities say we should. This tool, by the way, is based on the notion that it is so much easier getting what you want if you know what you want. And I'll bring this up again in the context of compensation. Right? We all want the best comp package we can get. What I found, though, being on the hiring side, doing executive search while writing my book, and since then, is that if there are a couple things that are very, very important to you, you can usually get them. And in fact, if you're dealing with your hiring manager or your HR person, whoever you're dealing with to get or to negotiate your comp package, especially if you're going against somebody else for the same position, knowing what you want can make things a lot easier for them. And do you think they'll like you more from the get-go if you're easy to deal with in the negotiation process? You better believe it. Let me walk you through 2 other quick examples here. This is actually a corporate marketing person at Cisco Systems. His work matrix there, and his motivation matrix. Now, what's fascinating about this, is that these answers are usually these answers are very indicative of many people's answers out there in the workplace. What's happening here? There we go. Money is important to people, but oftentimes there are things that are more important than money. Many times, much more important, looking at how they rank in the matrix outputs here. Knowing these things can be incredibly helpful if you're managing people, also in assessing or looking at your future working options. Okay, so how can I use these findings in my search? what have we just done? We have just made some tremendous progress, I would argue, in answering some very powerful and guiding questions. You can use these outputs as filters to ask yourself, how do I want to allocate my most valuable asset, my founder stock, going forward? So, sorry about that. Whenever you bump into an opportunity, or even better, create one, ask yourself, does this help me work my purposes, my missions? Does it leverage my passions and my releases and experiences? Does it draw on my strengths, fall into my value set? Does it fit with my priorities? Does it help me realize my dreams? Now let me just give you a caveat here. No work option is ever going to satiate all your filters, right? So I like to say if you can get 80 or 85% of what you want, that's a great deal. Go for it. But I just wanted to let you know that we have to deal in the realm of reality here. I'm sure everyone on this call realizes that. I just wanted to underscore it. One thing I like to do is after you go through this process, put your tools out in front of you, either on the wall or on the table, and look for patterns in them, and ask yourself, how can I leverage this data to realize my dreams? I like to say we all think of innovation as thinking outside the box. Well, I look at this stuff as your personal boxes. Has anyone here heard of the rule of 10,000 hours? It came about recently, I think, in a Malcolm Gladwell book. It's based on the notion that to become really good at something, you have to spend 10,000 hours doing it to really understand it well and be able to capitalize on it. I like to apply that same philosophy to us as well. We've been knowing ourselves in some variations for at least 10,000 hours. Look inside yourself. Look at who you are as a person, what you're good at, etc., your priorities, to come up with a proactive life work options. Okay. As I said before, matrices can be very, very powerful in some very specific contexts. So compensation. Now, I've done this a couple thousand times, so I've seen many criteria out there. I don't want to bias people, but here's some common criteria people have used. In addition to the standard, salary kinds of things: benefits, vacation time, flex time, working remotely, commuting costs, having a great boss/leader, working with cool people, making an impact, meeting my mission. Again, you come up with the criteria, and the more criteria you can get into a matrix, the better off you'll be, because the richer your data will become. Hello. Locations to both live and work. It could be a particular geography around the world, looking at different geographies, different cities, different countries, different settings, right? Urban life, suburban life, whatever it is. But going through this process, especially if you're looking for your life's work and you're in the middle of a search, can have a really telling impact on where you end up. Again, you are in control of where you go. Travel requirements and destinations. I'm a recovering consultant. You might want to take a job if, for example, you get to travel to London and Paris on a regular basis because you like those two cities, versus going to, say, Sioux City, Iowa for the winter. Not to ding Sioux City, Iowa, but you get my point. And finally, you can use them to compare offers, which is also a really good way to sort of quantitatively and logically look at what your options are. Also, as I mentioned before, the more specific your criteria, the better your results. So let's say commuting, right? If you can break down your commuting criteria to, say, for example, hour door to desk with 45 minutes via the train, versus a greater 30-minute commute by car, versus less than 30-minute commute by car, etc. Right? To give yourself a really good, distinct notion as to where you might want to look for work, and how far you're willing to go, etc. Again, compensation, same thing. So what's more important to you? A salary of $250K with a bonus max 20% versus a salary of $200K, a max bonus 30% with options vest in 3 years versus a salary of $175, no bonus but preferred shares, right? Again, it's a really, no criteria are wrong here, but it can give you some really valuable data as to how you want to frame your search going forward. Once you have developed your criteria, by the way, I strongly suggest translating them to action. So taking your top 2 or 3 ranking criteria, inserting them into guiding principles there, developing success measures, and then action items to make those principles happen. So a common life-related criteria is health, right? So I need to lose and keep off 10 pounds, lower my stress. You've got action items there. A common criteria I found in people looking for work, commute, right? I'm sick and tired of commuting. I don't want to look any place outside a 30-minute drive from where I'm at. So my success measure will be identify 7 employers within 30 minutes. My action items, I'm going to get on a map and draw a 30-minute circle around where I live, et cetera, et cetera. But again, knowing what's important to you should conceptually help drive your proactive search. Okay, a couple more applications here of these outputs. First, I don't know if any of you are into personal branding. It can be very, very helpful, actually, I find, especially if you're trying to switch sectors, for example. But intuitively, knowing what you can be the best at can really help you position yourself going after target markets in terms of roles, in terms of industries, whatnot. Your personal brand identity, understanding what's behind your brand can be facilitated very nicely by these outputs. And finally, what's your brand promise? What's your personal delivery going to be? And that can also be very nicely characterized looking at your outputs here. Final application of this data, it can really make your resume jump. Anyone take a guess how long the average recruiter, executive recruiter, or hiring person gives your life to date on your resume on first glance? Probably maybe 30 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on how well their sort of internal criteria meet what you have on your resume from the get-go. Now, I'll share my resume with you all right now just to give you an example of something a little different. And mind you, I would not suggest doing this in all cases, but from my experience, resumes do a reasonably good job relating what you've done, with some embellishment, of course, unfortunately, looking at the CEO of Yahoo right now. They do a much worse job explaining how you did what you did, and they rarely get into the why you've done what you've done. From my perspective, understanding the why and the how is much more important to me personally than what you've done per se. So starting off my resume with my personal mission, areas of strength, my guiding values, life experiences. Now, if I'm a recruiter or an HR person, A, I will remember this resume, and that's what you want to do. B, I've tickled your interest, so that you want to know more about me, right? You want to see, wow, who is this wingdad, I suppose, who's giving me this different resume format? But people will oftentimes spend a good deal more time looking at your resume, and they'll remember you for this information. Now, putting this information out there might seem to be a little audacious, whatnot. From my perspective, having hired hundreds of people so far in my career, I want to know the stuff about people from the get-go, right? Because if I want to make my teams really engage, having a common mission or purpose, having common values, understanding life experiences can really accelerate that process. Okay. Question to you all. Does anyone here want to be a legend? I mean, maybe not a legend like Steve Jobs, maybe a legend in your own community, your own work circles, maybe even just your family. I personally want to be remembered for something. What does it take to be legendary? Above all, it takes courage. It takes courage to be legendary. Now, a very good example of this. I'm sure most of you here know who Microsoft is, and a few of you probably follow them, maybe even have investments in them. Microsoft, as you probably can surmise, has not been doing all that well recently. All their main product lines are under attack from competitors. Bing, per my last knowledge, is still losing money. And I want to say recently, Microsoft made more money off interest in the bank than operating profit. This fact has not been lost on Bill Gates. About a year and a half ago now, I think it was, he had a special powwow in a wooded enclave outside Portland, Oregon, where he called 80 of his top lieutenants from around the world to come to this special strategy session, the purpose of which was how are we going to revive Microsoft. Now this picture here is of a gentleman named Orlando Ayala, Chief Revenue Officer of Microsoft. Every dollar of Microsoft's revenue comes through this gentleman. Now, about a week before this powwow, Orlando was converted, in my speak. He was converted to the notion that to be a successful company, you have to be able to bring your whole self to work, your purposes, your passions, your values to work. It took about a day and a half, but he finally broke. Now, prior to this, and I speak from experience, I've actually done some work with Microsoft's Eastern Regional Sales team, Orlando would dress up in combat fatigues to get his troops in the proper state of mind to go out there and put the window logo on anything that breathed. The powwow starts. Orlando's up with the first 2 hours slug of time where he is supposed to talk about Microsoft's sales strategy, innovative products coming down the line, etc. Orlando stands up there and essentially does a Jerry Maguire. He says, I don't want to talk about our sales strategy, our product roadmaps, etc. I want to talk about me and how I have been unable for the past 15 years to bring who I am to work. And he launches into a 15-minute diatribe, actually I think a 20-minute diatribe based on this topic. The end of which, there's dead silence, and then the entire audience gives him a standing ovation for purportedly 5 minutes. Everyone except for Bill Gates, who in his almost patentable style says, Orlando, you just did a very bad thing. You're calling us all bad people. To which Orlando responds, well, Bill, if we aren't, then why did your top lieutenants just give me a standing ovation for 5 minutes? Great quote from Orlando. Where does the bond come from that creates common purpose? I agree that belief in the cause starts with believing in who you are as an individual. Every individual is capable of leaving a legacy, of making their mark. That legacy comes from being real at all times. The only person who can determine relevancy to yourself is you. So what is holding you back? What is holding you back from going through this process or similar process of identifying your passions, your purposes, your values, your dreams, and incorporating them into your life's work search and beyond? What's holding you back? I'd like to return to 1999. I'm sorry, I'd like to go back to 1999. October 99, New York City. I was working for a company called Scient at the time. Scient was one of the large e-business consulting shops. We were a dot-com darling. We grew from 0 to 2,000 people organically in 3 years. The fastest grown professional services firm in U.S. history. Our market cap peaked at $9 billion on a run rate of $500 million. Crazy, crazy valuations. We had gone public 2 quarters prior, and our legendary CEO, Bob Howe, had most of the East Coast in the 5th floor of our New York City offices there on Union Square Park, and the rest of the company had dialed in from around the world for 2 reasons. First, the analyst call. Bob was big into transparency. He wanted the entire company to know how he was dealing with the analysts. The analysts were stunned. We had done $87 million in revenue the prior quarter, which is pretty good for a services firm started less than 2 years prior. Not one question from the analysts. Even my second-year business school roommate who was following us had no questions. I was blown away. Great job, guys. Keep it up. Plunk went their speakerphones. Bob then turned to us, asked us if we had any questions. We had no questions. We were the king of Wall Street that day. Our market cap, I think, was like $5 billion or something like that. Bob then closed with some comments I want to share with you all today, or close with. First, I want to thank every colleague for their contributions to these results. We got the best goddamn colleagues on the planet working for us. We're all delivering, our client list is the envy of the industry. We're delivering exceptional quality product to our clients, and we're all making more money than God right now. Looking back, though, for some of us at the end of the day, or for some of us at the end of our careers, the most important part of this entire experience is simply being there, being the center of a force which is changing the way the world works, raising the standard of living around the world for the common man and woman, exporting capitalism, maybe even democracy. Looking back, I can tell my grandkids I was there. Now, Scient, unlike many of his dot-com brethren, was profitable, yet, like them, about 2 years later, we declared bankruptcy. I'm sure clients have forgotten all about us. Our technology has most certainly gotten stale, and most of us didn't realize the upside. Looking back, though, Bob was 120% correct. The most valuable part of that entire experience was simply being there, changing the world in our own special way, because we could. This is a picture of the Arab Spring happening around the world right now. And the reason it's up there is because, from my perspective, what enabled the Arab Spring to happen was technology. Technologies developed in the States, internet technologies, mobile phone technologies, communications technologies, social networking technologies, all supported by U.S. capitalism. Going back to something I said prior, I am ecstatic to be working with people on this call because, again, we have an unarguable, incontrovertible capability to rock the world in ways our minds don't comprehend every day. Wherever you are is where you choose to be. I wish you all a lifetime of being there. Thank you for the gift of your time this evening. I know I went over here. Any questions at all you may have, please fire them away. And just to plug myself here real quickly, my book, and I also have user's manuals you can purchase through my website that walk you through the tools and actually give you the templates to go through them.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much, Lawler. It was a great presentation and so much information, and I think you inspired all of us as well. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Perfect, perfect. And I know we want to be conscientious of everybody's time, so we'll just take 2 or 3 questions that come in, and try to get them answered quickly as we finish up. But so actually we have, and also we will be sending a copy of the slides and the video. So don't worry if you weren't able to take notes. We'll be sending those as well. Perfect. So we actually, some of the questions that came in, what about, so how can you focus on finding your passion when you have deadlines at work and don't have the time to do so?
Great question, not uncommon question at all. Believe it or not, I've been able to walk people through the entire process in under 2 hours. So I suggest give yourself, say, just 20 minutes to go through any of the tools there and just start cranking on them. And you'd be surprised how quickly you can get stuff done, particularly if you give yourself a deadline. Now, on that note, this process requires us to use our right brains, which we don't use all that often, especially if we've got deadlines to do, because that's all left brain stuff. Your right brain has actually been wanting to chew on this kind of material for a long time. Don't be surprised if, as you go through this process, or I'm sorry, after you go through these tools, if particularly if you're doing something, quote, brainless, taking a shower, commuting to work, whatnot, if something jumps in your head and says, wow, this is important, I should add this to my pyramid, my balance sheet, whatever it is. But again, the takeaway here is that don't be surprised if other inputs jump into your brain sometime over the next couple of weeks.
Gotcha, perfect. We have a question as well. What if you're passionate for something, but you don't have the money to put it to practice?
That's a great question. So I would suggest maybe looking for ways to get involved with an organization that does that already somewhat, and learning from them while you start saving money to make your dreams happen. I've also had many interactions with the venture capital community and private equity community. It's amazing the power passion has making pitches for money of whatever scale, scope you're looking for. In fact, I know some VCs, they actually have on their checklist, is this person passionate about what they want to make happen here? Now, of course, you have to meet their criteria to get money out of them. And I don't know this specific case what your passion is, but just wanted to make that point that if you're passionate about something and you've got no problem telling people about it, you'd be surprised probably at the amount of actually gravitas and momentum you can build just based on your passions.
Great. Maybe one or two more, but what if you realize that you aren't doing what you're passionate about? How do you go about changing that?
That's a great question. I mean, first, I like to say we all join firms for certain reasons, maybe even unconscious reasons. And I don't want people to instantly think, well, I hate my job, I'm going to leave tomorrow, give them the finger, sayonara kind of thing, right? Even though that can be fun to do sometimes, or at least think about. Look to see how your talents, your passions, your purposes, your priorities might be better served in a different role, maybe even just a different group, or working for somebody else at your current firm, right? I also find that reframing your efforts can help as well. So, for example, they work for Cisco, right? Cisco, of all people, right? The corporate marketing group there, they didn't understand their impact they could bring to the world in terms of exporting capitalism and democracy because of how they were contributing to the Arab Spring. Once we went through that process and I showed them, how their efforts were really benefiting billions of people out there, essentially, their engagement and their overall happiness in the entire group went up substantially.
Perfect. Well, that's great. That's a great answer. And with that, thank you so much and have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.